The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the sound of 100 different species. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vortanian Empire adjusted his crystalline breathing apparatus and looked down at the small human delegation with barely concealed disgust. The humans sat quietly at their assigned table, looking so ordinary compared to the magnificent beings around them. "Order! Order!" The council speaker, a massive insectoid creature from Hive Prime, clicked his mandibles together. "We are here today to discuss the application of the species known as humans for membership in our great alliance." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not the pleasant kind, but the cruel sort that cut deep. Ambassador Sarah Chen kept her face calm, though her hands clenched slightly under the table. She had expected this reaction. "Tell us." "Little human," sneered General Thaxamore, his 4 arms crossed over his armored chest. "What exactly can your primitive species offer to the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy?" Sarah stood slowly, her simple black suit looking plain against the elaborate robes and bio-armor of the other delegates. "We offer our friendship, our knowledge, and our willingness to contribute to galactic peace." The laughter grew louder. Councillor Velnathi of the Ethereal Collective floated forward, her energy form pulsing with amusement. "Friendship? From a species that still fights wars with metal projectiles? Your people haven't even mastered basic energy manipulation. Your fastest ships barely reach 1% of light speed," added Science Minister Korgoth, his tentacles writhing with mirth. "It took you 3 centuries just to reach your neighboring star system. My people crossed the galaxy while yours were still discovering fire." Sarah's colleague, Commander Marcus Wright, shifted in his seat. The former military officer's jaw was tight, but Sarah placed a gentle hand on his arm. They had discussed this moment many times during their long journey to the council station. "It's true," Sarah admitted. "We are technologically behind most species represented here. Our weapons are simple, our ships are slow, and our energy sources are primitive by your standards." "Then why?" interrupted High Magistrate Quelnox, his reptilian features twisted in a sneer. "Should we waste our time with such an inferior race?" The chamber erupted in agreements. Delegates nodded, clicked, chirped, and hummed their approval of the question. Several species had already turned away, considering the matter settled. Sarah waited for the noise to die down. When silence finally returned, she spoke quietly, but her voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Because we're still here." The simple statement hung in the air like a challenge. "What did the small creature say?" asked Lord Commander Vexhai, cupping one of his 6 ears. "We're still here," Sarah repeated, louder this time. "Despite everything the universe has thrown at us, despite every disaster, every war, every plague, every extinction-level event our world has endured, we're still here." "So are many species," scoffed Ambassador Zethkar. "Survival alone is not an achievement worthy of council membership." "You're right," Sarah nodded. "But let me tell you about our survival. Our homeworld has been struck by massive asteroids that blocked out our sun for years. We adapted. Ice ages froze our planet for millennia. We endured. Diseases wiped out huge portions of our population. We rebuilt. Our own star bombards us with deadly radiation. We learned to live with it." She began walking slowly around the chamber, addressing different sections of delegates as she continued. "We split the atom and nearly destroyed ourselves with it, but instead we chose to use that power to fuel our cities. We poisoned our air and water with industrial waste, then developed technologies to clean them. We fought wars that should have ended our civilization. Yet here we stand before you, united as one species for the first time in our history." "Touching," yawned Councillor Velnathi. "But struggle is not achievement. What have you actually accomplished that we should care about?" Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "We've learned something that perhaps some of you have forgotten. We've learned that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. We've learned that when everything goes wrong, when the odds are impossible, when defeat seems certain, that's when humans do their best work. Philosophical nonsense, dismissed General Thaxmore. What practical skills do you possess? Commander Wright stood up, unable to remain silent any longer. We know how to fight wars that can't be won. We know how to fix problems that can't be solved. We know how to survive situations that should kill us. And most importantly, we never, ever give up. Empty boasting, laughed Science Minister Korgoth. Your species has never faced a real challenge. You've never fought against superior technology or overwhelming odds. You've only competed against yourselves on your isolated little world. Sarah returned to her place at the table. You're absolutely right, Minister. We've never faced a real galactic threat. But I wonder, have you considered what that might mean? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the chamber in an ominous glow. The massive view screens around the room flickered to life, showing space around the council station. At first, the delegates saw only stars. Then the stars began disappearing, blotted out by massive dark shapes moving through space. Ships emerged from hyperspace jumps, but these vessels were unlike anything in the galactic database. They were angular, predatory things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves, came the panicked voice of the station commander over the communication system. The response was a lance of crimson energy that split one of the council's defensive platforms in half. The explosion lit up the view screen like a deadly firework. Battle stations! All defense fleets engage! The station commander's voice cracked with fear and confusion. On the screens, the elegant ships of the Galactic Council moved to intercept the invaders. The pride of a dozen civilizations, vessels armed with the most advanced weapons known to science, engaged the Dark Fleet, and they began dying immediately. Vortanian crystal ships, supposedly indestructible, shattered like glass under the alien weapons. Ethereal collective energy beings simply vanished when touched by the strange crimson beams. The mighty bioships of Hive Prime were torn apart as if they were made of paper. The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates who had been laughing at humanity moments before now fled toward escape pods and emergency shelters. The proud, advanced civilizations of the galaxy faced something they had never encountered before. A threat they couldn't immediately understand or overcome. In the chaos, Sarah Chen remained seated, watching the battle unfold on the screens. Commander Wright stood beside her, his military training keeping him calm while aliens with far superior technology panicked around them. "What are they?" whispered Ambassador Zethkar, his crystalline breathing apparatus fogging with fear as he stumbled past the human delegation. Sarah looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "I don't know, but I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty." "What?" Zethkar gasped, his previous arrogance completely gone. Sarah's smile was cold as space itself. "They've never fought humans before." The battle raged on around the station as more council ships fell to the mysterious invaders. In the distance, massive dark vessels began moving toward inhabited systems, their intent clear. The galaxy's first real test in millennia had arrived, and the advanced civilizations that had mocked humanity's primitive nature were failing catastrophically. As escape pods began launching from the station, carrying fleeing delegates to safety, the small human delegation remained at their table. They watched the destruction with the calm focus of a species that had learned long ago that running from problems only delayed the inevitable confrontation. Commander Wright activated his personal communicator, sending a message on a frequency that would eventually reach Earth. "This is Wright. Begin Protocol 7 immediately. Full mobilization. We have contact." The message would take weeks to reach humanity's home system through conventional means, but the humans had prepared for this possibility. Hidden relay stations throughout human space would carry the signal faster than any Council technology could match. As the last of the fleeing aliens disappeared into their escape pods, Sarah finally stood from her chair. She walked to the massive view screen and placed her hand against the transparent aluminum, watching the alien fleet move through space like a plague of metal locusts. "You wanted to know what humans could contribute to the galaxy," she said quietly to the empty chamber. "I guess you're about to find out." In the silence of the abandoned council chamber, with only the distant sounds of battle and the emergency alarms for company, humanity's representatives prepared for the first truly galactic war their species would ever fight. And somewhere in the back of Sarah's mind, she couldn't help but think that the timing was almost perfect. The galaxy had spent the afternoon learning that humans were weak, primitive, and worthless. They were about to discover how wrong they had been. 3 weeks had passed since the attack on the Galactic Council station, and the galaxy burned. System after system fell to the invaders, who called themselves the Void Collective. Their dark ships moved through space like a spreading infection, consuming everything in their path. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. While the rest of the galaxy retreated in confusion and terror, humanity's response had been swift and coordinated. Every human ship in known space was converging on the Centauri system, where the largest concentration of refugees from the fallen worlds had gathered. "Captain," called Lieutenant Chen from the communications station, "we're receiving another distress call from the Vortanian fleet. They're requesting immediate assistance. Their crystal ships are being systematically destroyed." Elena didn't look away from the tactical display. "Response? Admiral Zhao says we'll assist once our fleet is in position. Estimated time to arrival, 6 hours. A new voice crackled over the general communication frequency. It was Ambassador Zethkar, the same Vortanian who had mocked humanity weeks earlier. His voice was strained with desperation and poorly concealed panic. "Human ships, this is Ambassador Zethkar of the Vortanian Empire. Our fleet is being overwhelmed. We need immediate support. Please, you must help us." Elena finally turned from the display and nodded to Lieutenant Chen. "Open a channel." "Channel open, Captain. Ambassador Zethkar, this is Captain Vasquez of the United Earth Ship Defiance. We hear your request for assistance." "Captain! Thank the stars! How quickly can your fleet arrive?" "We cannot hold much longer against these creatures." Elena's expression remained neutral. "Tell me, Ambassador, what exactly can the primitive species of humanity offer to help the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy?" There was a long pause on the communication line. When Zethkar spoke again, his voice was quieter, the arrogance completely gone. "Captain, we were wrong. Terribly wrong. Please, people are dying out here." "People have been dying since the attack began," Elena replied calmly. "Why should we risk our primitive ships and crude weapons to help civilizations that considered us worthless? Because you're the only ones left who aren't running." The desperate cry came from a new voice, General Thaxmore of the military caste that had laughed at human capabilities. "The ethereal collective has retreated to the outer rim. The Hive Prime fleet scattered after losing their home world. Half the council races have gone into hiding. You're the only ones still fighting." Lieutenant Chen looked up from her station with a puzzled expression. "Captain, that's not entirely accurate. Our intelligence reports show several species are still engaged with the enemy." "I know, Lieutenant," Elena said quietly. "Open fleet-wide communications." Throughout the human fleet, speakers crackled to life as Elena's voice reached every ship. "All vessels, this is Captain Vasquez. In approximately 6 hours, we will engage the enemy fleet currently overwhelming our allies. I want everyone to understand what we're facing." The tactical display shifted, showing the composition of the Void Collective fleet. The numbers were staggering. Dark ships the size of small moons, accompanied by thousands of smaller vessels that still dwarfed anything in humanity's fleet. The enemy possesses technology far beyond anything the Council races have encountered. Their weapons cut through energy shields like they don't exist. Their armor absorbs most directed energy attacks. Their ships are faster and more maneuverable than anything we've seen. By every logical measure, we should be running like everyone else. Murmurs rippled through the communication channels as ship captains absorbed this information. But here's what the enemy doesn't know about humans, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger. We've been preparing for this our entire existence. Every war we've fought, every disaster we've survived, every impossible situation we've overcome has been training for this moment. On the bridge of the UES Prometheus, Admiral Sarah Chen, recently promoted from her diplomatic position, studied the incoming data about Void collective tactics. Her years as an ambassador had given her insights into alien psychology that her military colleagues sometimes missed. "Admiral," called Commander Martinez from the tactical station, "we're receiving battlefield recordings from the fallen Council fleets. Permission to analyze their tactical approach?" "Granted. Display the last engagement from the Vortanian Crystal Fleet." The holographic display showed the elegant Vortanian ships moving in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls gleaming as they approached the dark enemy vessels. Their tactics were textbook perfect. The kind of maneuvers taught in every advanced military academy in the galaxy, and they were completely ineffective. The Void collective ships moved like living things, flowing around the rigid formations, striking from unexpected angles. When the Vortanians tried to adapt, changing their formations mid-battle, the enemy seemed to anticipate every move. "They're fighting like machines," observed Commander Martinez. "Perfect coordination, flawless execution, no wasted motion." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "That's exactly the problem. Show me the ethereal collective engagement." The next recording showed energy beings trying to outmaneuver the enemy through superior speed and agility. Again, perfect execution. Again, total failure. The Void collective ships moved with impossible precision, cutting off escape routes before the ethereals even began their maneuvers. "Show me Hive Prime." The bioships of Hive Prime had tried overwhelming force, sending massive swarms of living vessels against the enemy. The result was the same. Systematic destruction. "Admiral," said Martinez slowly, "it's like they know exactly what each species will do before they do it." "That's because they do," Chen replied. "They've been studying galactic military doctrine for who knows how long. Every species fights the way their technology and psychology dictates. Crystal ships use geometric formations because that's how crystalline minds think. Energy beings fight with flowing, elegant tactics because that matches their nature. Bioships swarm because that's what living things do." "But humans," Admiral Chen smiled grimly. "Humans don't fight the way our technology dictates. We fight the way our enemy least expects us to." Back on the UES Defiance, Captain Vasquez received a priority communication from Admiral Chen. "Elena, we've analyzed the enemy tactics. I'm uploading a new battle plan to all ships. Protocol designation: Chaos Theory." Elena reviewed the plan quickly, her eyebrows rising as she read. "Admiral, this is insane." "Exactly. That's what makes it perfect." 6 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system. What they found was carnage. The pride of 3 different galactic civilizations hung dead in space, their elegant ships twisted into unrecognizable wreckage. The Void collective fleet moved slowly through the debris field, methodically hunting down survivors. On the bridge of the lead enemy vessel, Intelligence Prime Morduk analyzed the new arrivals. The human ships were exactly as the intelligence reports had indicated: primitive, slow, armed with simple kinetic weapons and crude energy systems. The tactical computer calculated a 99.97% probability of victory within 4 hours. Interesting? Morduk's synthetic voice echoed through the bridge. The humans choose to fight rather than flee. This will provide useful data about their species before we consume their home system. The human fleet spread out in what appeared to be a standard battle formation. Morduk's tactical systems immediately began calculating optimal response patterns based on thousands of previous engagements with inferior species. Then the humans opened fire, and everything Morduk thought he knew about warfare went out the nearest airlock. Instead of targeting the enemy ships, the human fleet began shooting at everything. They fired at asteroids, at debris from destroyed Council ships, at empty space where nothing existed. Their shots seemed random, wasted, the actions of a panicking primitive species. "What are they doing?" asked Subprime Velnash, confusion evident even through the synthetic voice modulators. Morduk's tactical computer struggled to find patterns in the chaos. The humans weren't following any known military doctrine. Their ships moved in seemingly random directions, fired at random targets, broke formation without apparent reason. Then the first asteroid exploded. The human fleet had been shooting at carefully selected pieces of debris, turning them into massive fragmentation bombs. As the asteroids broke apart, they created fields of high-velocity shrapnel that forced the Void Collective ships to alter their perfect formations. "Clever," admitted Morduk, "but ultimately futile. All ships, standard dispersal pattern 7. The Void Collective fleet began to spread out, moving to avoid the debris fields. It was a textbook response to area denial weapons, executed with mechanical precision, which was exactly what Admiral Chen had counted on. "Now," she whispered into her communication system. Throughout the human fleet, ships that had appeared to be retreating in panic suddenly reversed course. They had been positioning themselves in seemingly random locations, but now their true purpose became clear. Every human ship was exactly where it needed to be to catch the Void Collective vessels as they moved into their dispersal pattern. The enemy had fallen into a trap disguised as chaos. "All ships, execute Maneuver 7, Admiral Chen commanded. What happened next had never been seen in galactic warfare. Human ships began ramming enemy vessels, but not in desperate suicide attacks. They struck precisely calculated points on the alien hulls, using their primitive kinetic energy as a weapon more devastating than any energy beam. The UES Defiance slammed into the side of a Void Collective destroyer, but Elena had angled the approach perfectly. The human ship's reinforced bow crumpled, absorbing the impact, while the enemy vessel's hull split open like an overripe fruit. Before the alien ship could recover, Elena's crew fired their entire missile complement directly into the breach. "Damage report!" Elena called as her ship pulled away from the explosion. "Forward sections heavily damaged, but hull integrity holding," reported Commander Singh from engineering. "We can make one more ramming run before structural failure becomes critical." "Then let's make it count. All ships, this is Defiance. Remember what we learned in the history books. Sometimes the primitive weapon beats the advanced one. Sometimes David beats Goliath. Today, humanity shows the galaxy what happens when you underestimate the species that learn to fight in the mud." Throughout the human fleet, similar scenes played out. Ships designed for exploration and cargo transport became battering rams. Fighters armed with simple ballistic weapons exploited gaps in energy shields never designed to stop solid projectiles. Human crews used boarding pods to assault enemy vessels, bringing the fight to corridors where advanced technology meant less than training, courage, and sheer, bloody-minded determination. On the bridge of Intelligence Prime Morduk's flagship, alarms blared as damage reports flooded in. The tactical computer's probability calculations fluctuated wildly, unable to process tactics that defied all known parameters. "This is impossible," Velnash reported. "They're using ramming attacks and ballistic weapons against our defensive systems. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons and guided projectiles. not crude kinetic impacts. Morduk watched his fleet, the product of 1,000 conquered civilizations, being systematically dismantled by ships that shouldn't pose any threat. How are they predicting our movements? The answer came from an unexpected source. The communication systems crackled to life with a human voice, somehow having penetrated their secured channels. Because we've been watching you fight for weeks, Admiral Chen's voice echoed through the Void Collective flagship. We studied every battle, every tactic, every response pattern. You fight like machines because you are machines. Artificial intelligence, no matter how advanced, follows predictable patterns. But humans are biological, Morduk replied, his synthetic voice carrying a note of what might have been respect. You adapt, improvise, act irrationally. We prefer the term creatively, Chen corrected. You analyzed the galaxy's military capabilities and found them wanting. But you made one critical error in your assessment. Which was, you assumed that because humanity appeared weak, we actually were weak. You assumed that because our technology was primitive, our tactics would be primitive. You assumed that because we'd never fought a galactic war, we didn't know how to fight. The human fleet continued its relentless assault, using tactics that violated every principle of advanced warfare. They fought dirty, used their weaknesses as strengths, and turned the enemy's superiority against them. The civilizations you defeated before us, Admiral Chen continued, they fought like they lived, in comfort, with advanced technology, following rules and protocols developed over millennia of peace. But humans? We learned to fight in hell. Every war we've ever won, we won by refusing to accept defeat, when defeat was certain. As if to emphasize her point, the UES Defiance completed its second ramming attack, this time against Morduk's flagship. The impact sent shock waves through the massive vessel, and human boarding parties immediately began cutting their way through the hull with primitive plasma torches and explosive charges. And now, Admiral Chen's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction, you get to learn what that means. The battle was far from over, but already the tide had turned. The Void Collective, for the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, faced an enemy that fought back with something they couldn't calculate, couldn't predict, and couldn't overcome through superior technology alone. They faced human determination. The battle in the Centauri system raged for 18 hours straight. By the time the last Void Collective ship exploded in brilliant orange flames, the human fleet had lost 60% of their vessels, but they had achieved something no other galactic civilization had managed. They had won. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UES Prometheus, her uniform torn and bloodied from when shrapnel had breached the bridge during the final assault. Around her, exhausted crew members worked to coordinate rescue operations for survivors from both human and alien ships. Admiral, called Commander Martinez, his voice hoarse from shouting orders during the battle, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. Everyone wants to know how we defeated the Void Collective. Chen wiped blood from a cut on her forehead and looked at the tactical display. Red markers showed the positions of destroyed enemy ships scattered throughout the system. Tell them the truth. We did what humans do best. We adapted. The communication systems crackled with incoming messages from every corner of known space. The ethereal collective, hiding in the outer rim galaxies. The Vortanian Empire, desperately trying to rebuild their shattered fleet. Even the mysterious Hive Prime, whose bioships had been thought extinct. Admiral Chen, came the voice of High Magistrate Quelnox, the same reptilian leader who had dismissed humanity as inferior weeks ago. On behalf of the remaining council races, we formally request your assistance. The Void Collective main fleet is moving toward the core systems. Our combined forces cannot stop them alone. Chen exchanged glances with her senior staff. Captain Elena Vasquez, Her ship, barely holding together after multiple ramming attacks, appeared on the holographic communication display from the UES Defiance. "What do you think, Elena?" Chen asked her former diplomatic colleague, now battle-tested naval captain. Elena's smile was grim but determined. "I think it's time these advanced civilizations learned what a real war looks like." 3 months later, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Human ships, designed with brutal practicality rather than elegant efficiency, moved through systems that had been battlegrounds since the invasion began. But now, instead of fleeing refugees, these systems housed the largest military buildup in galactic history. In the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber, now relocated to a heavily fortified station in human space, representatives from across the galaxy gathered for what many considered the most important meeting in galactic history. The chamber looked different now. Gone were the ornate decorations and symbols of peaceful cooperation. In their place were tactical displays, communication arrays, and the grim necessities of a civilization at war. Ambassador Sarah Chen, recently returned to her diplomatic role while retaining her military rank, stood before the assembled delegates. The faces looking back at her were not the arrogant, dismissive aliens she had addressed months ago. These were survivors, beings who had watched their worlds burn and their fleets destroyed. "The situation is this," Chen began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had stared death in the face and emerged victorious. "Our intelligence indicates that the Void Collective main fleet consists of approximately 12,000 vessels of various sizes. Among these are 7 planet killers, massive ships capable of reducing inhabited worlds to asteroid fields." The chamber was silent except for the nervous clicking of mandibles and the soft hum of translation devices. "The good news," Chen continued, "is that we now understand their tactics and limitations. The Void Collective relies on artificial intelligence to coordinate their fleet movements. This makes them incredibly efficient but also predictable once you understand their programming patterns." Ambassador Zethkar raised one of his crystalline appendages. "Admiral Chen, with respect, our combined fleets number less than 8,000 ships. Even with the tactical advantages you've discovered, we're still outnumbered." "In ships, yes," Chen agreed, "but not in determination, and not in what we humans like to call creative problem-solving." She activated the main display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red markers indicated Void Collective positions, while blue ones showed Allied forces. The red far outnumbered the blue. Traditional galactic warfare involves fleet actions in open space, ship-to-ship combat using energy weapons at long range, and victory determined by technological superiority. Chen's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "The Void Collective has mastered this type of warfare. They've defeated every civilization that tried to fight them conventionally." General Thaxmore, his forearms crossed, leaned forward in his seat. "Are you suggesting we abandon proven military doctrine?" "I'm suggesting," Chen replied, "that proven military doctrine is what got most of your fleets destroyed. Humans didn't defeat the Void Collective in the Centauri system by following the rules. We won by breaking them." She touched a control, and the display shifted to show footage from the Centauri battle. The assembled delegates watched in fascination as human ships used ramming attacks, turned debris into weapons, and exploited the gaps in enemy defenses that no one had thought to look for. "This is barbaric," muttered Science Minister Korgoth, his tentacles writhing with distaste. "Ramming attacks, kinetic weapons, fighting in close quarters? These are the tactics of primitives." "And they work." Elena Vasquez's voice cut across the chamber as she entered through a side door. The captain still bore the scars from her battles, and her presence carried the weight of someone who had faced the enemy and survived. "Captain Vasquez," Counselor Velnathi's energy form pulsed with what might have been embarrassment. "We did not intend any insult." "No insult taken," Elena replied, taking her place beside Chen. But let me ask you something, counselor. When your energy beings tried to outmaneuver the enemy with elegant tactics and superior speed, how many of your people died? The energy being's glow dimmed. 43% of our combat-capable population was lost in the first week of fighting. And when the Vortanians used their perfect crystalline formations and advanced shielding technology, how many ships survived? Ambassador Zethkar's breathing apparatus fogged. Less than 20% of our fleet remains operational. But when humans used barbaric, primitive, uncivilized tactics, Elena continued relentlessly, we achieved something none of you managed. We won. Admiral Chen stepped forward, her diplomatic training evident as she smoothed over Elena's blunt assessment. What Captain Vasquez is illustrating is that effectiveness matters more than elegance in warfare. The Void Collective has adapted to fight advanced civilizations using advanced tactics. They haven't adapted to fight humans using human tactics. So what do you propose? Asked High Magistrate Quelnox. Chen smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression. We teach the galaxy how to fight dirty. The next 6 months saw the greatest military retraining program in galactic history. Human instructors, veterans of the Centauri battle, traveled to every allied world to teach new tactics to species that had forgotten what real warfare looked like. On the crystal world of Vortanis Prime, Commander Wright stood before a group of crystalline officers, teaching them concepts that went against every instinct their species possessed. Forget formations, Wright instructed, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. Forget elegant maneuvers. When you engage the enemy, I want you to think like guerrilla fighters, not parade ground soldiers. The Vortanian officers exchanged glances through their crystalline faceplates. Commander, our crystal ships are designed for geometric precision. Random movements could shatter our hulls. Then modify your ships, Wright replied bluntly. Add shock absorbers. Reinforce the weak points. If your technology doesn't support the tactics you need to survive, change your technology. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists to modify energy weapons for close-range combat. Human tacticians taught bioship pilots to fight as individuals rather than hive minds. Human soldiers trained alongside energy beings to coordinate attacks that combined the precision of advanced technology with the unpredictability of human creativity. Not everyone adapted quickly. The learning process was painful, expensive, and often deadly as training accidents claimed lives. But slowly, the galaxy began to change. Ships were modified with reinforced hulls for ramming attacks. Weapons were reconfigured for close-range combat. Most importantly, commanders learned to think like humans, to expect the unexpected, to turn disadvantages into advantages, and to never accept defeat as final. The final confrontation came at the galactic core, where the Void Collective had established their forward command base on the ruins of the ancient First Civilization homeworld. The Allied fleet that assembled there bore little resemblance to the elegant formations that had been destroyed in the early days of the war. Crystal ships bristled with kinetic weapons and shock absorbers. Bioships had been modified with armor plating and ramming prows. Energy beings had learned to coordinate with solid matter allies in ways their species had never attempted before. And at the center of it all, human ships served as the backbone of a fleet that had learned to fight like humanity, dirty, determined, and absolutely unwilling to surrender. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Humanity's Last Stand, the newest and largest ship in the human fleet, built specifically for this final battle. Around her, officers from a dozen different species worked side by side, united by months of shared training and common purpose. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Chen. You know your targets, you know your tactics. Remember what we've learned these past months. The enemy expects us to fight like civilized beings. Today, we fight like survivors. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. It was chaos made manifest, a perfect storm of coordinated unpredictability that the Void Collective's artificial intelligence simply could not process. Ships ramming planet killers at precisely calculated weak points. Energy beings phasing through enemy hulls to sabotage critical systems from within. Bioships releasing clouds of corrosive organisms that ate through advanced armor like acid. Crystal ships using their natural harmonic frequencies to shatter enemy hulls from the inside. And through it all, human ships served as the coordinators, the adapters, the ones who saw opportunities in disasters and turned enemy strengths into weaknesses. Intelligence Prime Morduk, commanding the Void Collective forces from his massive flagship, watched his superior fleet being systematically dismantled by tactics that defied every strategic model his race had developed. "This is impossible," Subprime Velnash reported for the 100th time. "They're using 17 different tactical doctrines simultaneously. Our prediction algorithms cannot compensate for this level of chaos." "It's not chaos," Morduk realized, his artificial consciousness finally understanding what he faced. "It's adaptation. They're not following any doctrine because they're making it up as they go along." The communication systems crackled with Admiral Chen's voice. "Intelligence Prime Morduk, this is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Fleet. Your strategic databases contain the tactical profiles of every major galactic civilization. But you missed something important." "What did we miss, Admiral?" Morduk asked, genuine curiosity in his synthetic voice. "You cataloged our weapons, our ships, our apparent capabilities. But you never studied what makes humans human. We don't just adapt to survive, Intelligence Prime. We adapt to win, and we learn from everyone around us." As if to emphasize her point, the UES Humanity's Last Stand executed a maneuver that combined Vortanian precision, ethereal agility, and human unpredictability into something entirely new. The ship danced through enemy fire like living energy, struck with crystalline precision, and adapted its tactics mid-battle like a biological organism. "You made the same mistake every bully makes," Chen continued, as her ship led a coordinated assault on the Void Collective flagship. "You assumed that because we looked weak, we were weak. You assumed that because our technology was primitive, our people were primitive. But humans aren't defined by our technology, Intelligence Prime. We're defined by our refusal to accept limitations." The Void Collective flagship shuddered under the combined assault of human kinetic weapons, Vortanian harmonic disruptors, and ethereal energy attacks. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, the artificial intelligence that had conquered 100 worlds faced something it could not overcome: the combined will of species that had learned to fight like humans. "Admiral," Morduk's voice carried something that might have been respect, "you have achieved something remarkable. You have united the galaxy not through diplomacy or trade, but through shared adversity." "That's what humans do best," Chen replied as her fleet closed in for the final assault. "We bring out the best in people when things are at their worst." The explosion of the Void Collective flagship lit up the galactic core like a new star. When the light faded, the threat that had terrified the galaxy for months was finally ended. In the aftermath, as rescue ships moved through the debris fields and casualty reports came in from across the fleet, Admiral Chen found herself back where this had all started, addressing the Galactic Council. But this time, the chamber was filled not with arrogant dismissal, but with respect earned through shared struggle. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," she began, "we gather here not as separate species competing for resources or status, but as allies who have proven that together we can overcome any threat." Ambassador Zethkar stood slowly, his crystalline form reflecting the lights of the chamber. "Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Vortanian Empire, I formally apologize for our earlier assessment of humanity. We were wrong to mock your capabilities." Similar declarations followed from around the chamber. Species that had considered humans primitive now praised their tactical innovation. Civilizations that had dismissed human technology now sought to learn from human adaptability. "The truth is," Chen said when the formal apologies were complete, "you weren't entirely wrong in your initial assessment. We are technologically behind most species here. Our weapons are simple, our ships are slow, and our energy sources are primitive by your standards." The chamber was silent, delegates uncertain how to respond. Chen smiled. "But what you failed to understand is that limitations breed innovation. Adversity breeds strength. And when you combine human determination with galactic knowledge and resources, you get something that neither could achieve alone." She gestured to the mixed crews visible through the chamber's windows. Humans working alongside aliens, not as superiors or inferiors, but as equals, bound by common purpose. "The galaxy mocked humanity when we asked to join your alliance. You questioned what we could contribute. Now you know the answer." General Thaxmore leaned forward in his seat. "What answer is that, Admiral?" Chen's smile broadened. "We contributed something you had forgotten you possessed. We reminded you how to fight for what matters. We showed you that being advanced doesn't mean being invincible, and that sometimes the primitive solution is the right solution." She paused, looking around the chamber at faces that now showed respect instead of dismissal. "But most importantly, we proved that when the galaxy faces extinction, it doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, or how advanced your technology is. What matters is that you're willing to stand up and fight for something bigger than yourself." The formal vote to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Council was unanimous, but by then, everyone in the chamber understood that the real victory wasn't political recognition. It was the knowledge that the galaxy now possessed something it had lacked for millennia: the human spirit, tempered by adversity and shared with all who were willing to learn. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many to begin the long journey home to worlds that were finally safe again, Admiral Chen remained at the podium. Captain Elena Vasquez joined her, both women looking out at the stars that had nearly been consumed by an enemy that had seemed invincible. "Think they'll remember the lesson?" Elena asked. Chen considered the question carefully. "For a while, until peace makes them comfortable again, and comfort makes them forget what they're capable of when they have to be." "And then?" Admiral Chen smiled. "Then they'll have to learn all over again that the galaxy's greatest strength isn't its technology or its ancient wisdom. It's its ability to produce people willing to stand up when standing up seems impossible." Outside the station, human and alien ships worked together to clear the debris of battle and begin the long process of rebuilding. The galaxy had learned that being mocked by your enemies was far less dangerous than being underestimated by them, and somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other threats waited in the darkness. But now, when they came, they would face not just the advanced civilizations of the galactic core, but something far more dangerous: those civilizations taught to fight like humans.